Hi, my name is Shalome Frye, and this is my story of how I became a Christian. I grew up in a home that we never talked about God, we never prayed, and we never went to church on Sunday. I led a very sinful, selfish life most of my entire life. When I was 19, I met my husband, Aaron, and we continued to live a very selfish, sinful life. At 27, we had our daughter, Savannah, and we still continued to live a very selfish life, and we never went to church. We didn't know how to pray. We both worked at the time, and we had to find somebody for childcare for Savannah. Luckily, a lady across the street was not watching anybody and was a stay-at-home mom, and she had offered to watch Savannah for us. Every day when we would pick her up, she would ask if there was anything that she could pray for me for. Occasionally, we would invite me to church, but we never accepted the offer. A few years down the road, we had our son Langdon, and about 6 months after he was born, our daughter Savannah, who was 2.5 at the time, went into a bathroom, climbed up, shut the door, locked it, and blew out a candle and lit her forehead on fire. We had to rush her to the emergency room, and the first thing that came to mind was to call Michelle, the lady who watched her, and to ask for prayers, immediate prayers for her. That was my first time that I really turned to God, needing His help. Savannah's recovery was very long. She had suffered a 3rd-degree burn to her forehead, and we had to go to a hospital that was 5 hours away. I found myself trying to pray and turning to God and just not quite knowing what to do. Once we got back to Spokane, Michelle had occasionally asked me to come to church, and I started going with Langdon and Savannah. About 6 months after that, my husband Aaron took a job in Indiana, and we moved about 2,000 miles across the United States. We kind of turned to each other, and we decided that we wanted to try some churches. And we started looking around, but we never found anything that quite fit. About that time, we decided to try for our 3rd child. At 6.5 months, we went in for a routine ultrasound to find out that our son was no longer alive. We were immediately sent to the hospital to induce labor and to have our son. Those moments were probably the hardest times in our life as we struggled together, wondering if somehow God was punishing us for the sinful past that we had had. As we were sitting there, we just wanted somebody to come pray with us and our son. The pastor that was on call at the hospital was called 4 times and never showed up to our room, and a nurse walked in and said, "I had heard that your daughter had went to Greenwood Christian and I attend there. Is there any way I can call our pastors and they can come up?" And we immediately said yes. Within an hour, Ellen Sheets and Scott Pitts were up in our room praying with us and praying over our son. The weeks and months to follow were very hard and difficult, and probably the hardest times in our life. And I remember laying in bed having one of those days where I just couldn't get out of bed. As I was laying in bed on one of the hardest days, I had rolled over and saw a book about God that my husband was given in Washington. I had the sudden urge to pick it up and read it. And in those first few pages, I had learned that Jesus Christ died on a cross for my sins and that I was forgiven. I had the most overwhelming sense of peace and love, and I knew that I wasn't being punished. From that point on, Aaron and I had started coming to Greenwood Christian and praying together and learning more about God. In the years after that, we went through infertility and ectopic and a miscarriage before we had our daughter McKinley. Instead of bringing us further apart or wondering why these things were going on, we had turned to God. And in those times, we had both gotten baptized. From the point that I picked up that book, I knew that I didn't want to live a sinful, selfish life anymore. And I also felt the need that I wasn't being saved just for me, that I was being saved to help my children or other people.